Diplomatic relations in the Galactic Confederation were about as smooth as a sandpaper massage, which is to say, not smooth at all. Humans had been part of the interstellar community for just 17 standard cycles, and they'd already earned a reputation that made most alien species simultaneously fascinated and terrified. Commander Krell of the Voraxian Diplomatic Corps remembered the first comprehensive briefing about humans like it was yesterday. The holographic presentation had been a masterpiece of bureaucratic understatement. Caution advised, species exhibits unpredictable problem-solving methodologies. Translation, humans were batshit crazy and everyone knew it. The initial first contact hadn't helped matters. While most emerging civilizations approached galactic introduction with careful diplomacy, humans had essentially crashed the cosmic party. Their first interstellar transmission wasn't a dignified diplomatic message, no. It was a broadcast of something called a cat video, followed by what appeared to be a drunk human singing karaoke while wearing a fuzzy Viking helmet. The Confederation's initial response teams were confused, to say the least. But what truly set humans apart wasn't their adults, it was their children. Somehow, human offspring managed to be simultaneously the most terrifying and most fascinating creatures in known space. Other species had offspring that were delicate, carefully nurtured, protected from any potential harm. Human children, they were miniature chaos generators. Krell had witnessed a human child, no more than 6 standard Earth years, negotiate a complex trade dispute between 2 notoriously aggressive merchant clans from the Rigel system. The child hadn't used diplomacy. She'd used what humans called puppy eyes, and something incomprehensible involving a stuffed textile creature called a teddy bear. The merchant clans had capitulated within minutes. Most recently, tensions had been brewing between the Confederation and the isolationist Zaan collective. The Zaan were a silicon-based species known for their rigid social structures and absolute commitment to logic. They found most organic life forms problematic. Humans, naturally, were their absolute worst nightmare. The current diplomatic standoff centered around a resource-rich system near the Zaan's primary territories. Negotiations had been deadlocked for months, with neither side willing to compromise. Standard protocols suggested continued bureaucratic stalemate, endless committee meetings and passive-aggressive diplomatic notes. But something was brewing, something that would require cooperation from the most unlikely of sources. And it would all start with a group of human children on a routine scientific expedition. Nobody, not the Confederation, not the Zaan, not anyone, could have predicted just how spectacularly complicated things were about to become. The Horizon Explorer was supposed to be a routine scientific research vessel, a small, state-of-the-art research craft carrying 12 human children between the ages of 8 and 14. Along with a carefully selected crew of xenobiologists, astronomers, and educational specialists. Their mission, a supervised expedition to study the recently discovered Epsilon Coral Nebula, a region known for its unique radiation signatures and pristine astronomical conditions. Lieutenant Mara Rodriguez, the mission's lead scientist, was checking the navigational systems when the first anomaly appeared, a slight shimmer in the quantum displacement readings. Most would have missed it, but Mara wasn't most people. "Zara," she called to the ship's AI, "run a full spectral analysis on the last quantum variants." The ship's AI responded with clinical precision. "Detecting multiple quantum inconsistencies. Recommendation, immediate course correction." Aboard the bridge, 3 non-human observers watched with growing concern. There was Zelnak, a tall crystalline being from the Prismatic Confederacy, whose translucent body shifted colors with his emotional state. Currently, he was a swirling mix of deep purple and anxious orange. Next to him stood Grok, a methane-breathing Krillian whose 4 arms were perpetually folded in a posture of professional skepticism. The third observer was Arfin Talarian, a human diplomatic liaison who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Those readings," Zelnak said, his crystalline form flickering, "they're consistent with a quantum cascade event." Grok's multiple eyes narrowed. "Impossible. We're in a documented safe zone. The nebula's radiation should be stable." Rin leaned forward, his finger tracing the holographic display. Guys, those aren't just anomalies. Those are active quantum distortions. Something's destabilizing the local space-time continuum. The children, meanwhile, were blissfully unaware. Some were in the observation deck, pressing their faces against the viewports. Others were in the research labs, conducting experiments that ranged from mildly fascinating to potentially catastrophic. 12-year-old Marcus was attempting to grow bioluminescent bacteria in zero gravity. 11-year-old Aisha was calibrating a spectral analyzer that could probably detect molecular changes on the other side of the galaxy. Suddenly, Zara's voice cut through the growing tension. Warning. Quantum cascade, imminent. Spatial integrity, compromised. Zelnak's body turned a deep, urgent crimson. Emergency protocols, now! But it was too late. The ship lurched. Not a gentle movement, but a violent tear that seemed to twist reality itself. Gravitational systems fluctuated. For a moment, the laws of physics seemed to become suggestions rather than rules. "We're being pulled," Grok shouted, his translator struggling to convey the pure panic in his voice. "Into a quantum rift." Rin grabbed the emergency communication console. "This is Diplomatic Liaison Talarian. We have a Class 5 spatial anomaly. Repeat, Class 5 spatial anomaly. 12 human children on board. Immediate assistance required." The response was immediate and terrifying. Silence. Not the typical communication delay. Pure, absolute silence, as if the entire communication network had been erased. "This is bad," Zelnak muttered, which was perhaps the understatement of the galactic century. In the research labs and observation decks, the children continued their activities. Marcus's bacteria experiment continued to glow. Aisha's spectral analyzer hummed. Somewhere, a group was playing an impromptu game of zero-gravity tag. They had no idea that they were about to become the most important and potentially most dangerous passengers in the history of galactic exploration. The quantum rift continued to expand, and nobody knew exactly what was on the other side. The emergency communication channels of the Galactic Confederation lit up like a cosmic Christmas tree, except this wasn't a festive celebration. It was pure, unbridled panic. Zelnak's crystalline form was now a frantic kaleidoscope of colors that would make a disco ball look monochromatic. "We need a collaborative response," he announced, his translator struggling to convey the mixture of urgency and existential dread. Grok, the methane-breathing Krillian, had a different approach. Collaborative? With whom? The children are from one species. The ship is about to potentially disintegrate across multiple quantum realities. This is not a situation that calls for a committee meeting. Rin Talarian, the human diplomatic liaison, raised an eyebrow. "Welcome to dealing with humans. Nothing is ever simple." The emergency conference was a study in interspecies dysfunction. Representatives from 17 different galactic powers sat in a virtual communication sphere, each more reluctant than the last to commit resources. The Zahn Collective's representative, a geometric crystal construct that communicated through precise mathematical equations, was the first to object. Probability of successful intervention, 0.037%. Resource allocation deemed inefficient. "Those are children," Rain interrupted, his voice flat and dangerous. 12 human children. A moment of uncomfortable silence followed. Every species in the Confederation had by now developed a healthy respect and healthy terror of human children. Commander Krell, who had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke. "The quantum rift is expanding. If we don't act, we're looking at a potential multidimensional catastrophe." Zelnak's motivation was scientific. The quantum event could provide unprecedented research opportunities, if anyone survived to study it. Grok was motivated by a complex mixture of professional duty and a bizarre fascination with human unpredictability. Rin just wanted to ensure no children died on his watch. The Prismatic Confederacy's lead strategist, a being composed of intersecting light waves, projected a holographic representation of the quantum anomaly. The rift is creating recursive probability loops. Each moment of inaction exponentially increases potential negative outcomes. "Translation," Rin muttered. "We're running out of time." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A junior communication specialist from the Meraxian Collaborative, a species known for their bureaucratic inefficiency, noticed something peculiar in the communication logs. The children, she said, her tendrils of communication-sensing appendages quivering, they're not panicking. This was unprecedented. Every other species would have been in full-scale emergency mode. Human children, facing a potentially universe-ending event, seemed to be treating it like an unexpected field trip. Grok's multiple eyes focused on the communication logs. One of the children, Aisha, the young scientist, was recalibrating her spectral analyzer. Another, Marcus, was taking notes on how the quantum distortions were affecting his bioluminescent bacteria. "They're studying the event," Zelnick observed, his crystalline form shifting to a color that suggested a mixture of horror and grudging admiration. The Zahn Collective's representative calculated something complex. Intervention probability increased to 0.274%, marginally less futile. Rin knew what this meant. "We're going in, and we're going to need every species willing to contribute." The alliance wasn't just unexpected, it was impossible. The Prismatic Confederacy would provide quantum stabilization technology. The Krillian engineering collectives would contribute emergency structural reinforcement systems. The Zahn would provide their unparalleled computational abilities. And humans, they would provide something far more dangerous: unpredictability. "I want real-time communication with those children," Rin demanded. "I want to know exactly what they're thinking." As the various species began to coordinate, a process that normally took months, if not years, something extraordinary happened. They were moving with a speed and precision that defied their usual bureaucratic nature, all because of 12 human children who were more interested in scientific observation than personal survival. Grok looked at Zelnick. Zelnick looked at the communication logs. Rin just shook his head. "This," he said, "is going to be a very long day." The rescue was about to begin, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was going to be simple. The rescue vessel looked like something a drunk engineer might design after consuming 17 types of intergalactic moonshine. It was a hodgepodge of technologies from 17 different species, welded together with what could only be described as mathematical desperation and quantum duct tape. "This is not a ship," Grok muttered, his forearms crossing in a gesture of pure skepticism. "This is a technological hate crime." Zelnick's crystalline body flickered with colors that suggested both excitement and abject terror. "Technically, it's a multi-species collaborative effort." "Technically," Grok responded, "that's what I just said." The quantum stabilization systems were a marvel of impossible engineering. Prismatic light waves intersected with Krillian molecular reinforcement fields. Zahn computational matrices danced with human-designed adaptive algorithms. Inside the Horizon Explorer, the children were remarkably calm. "Guys," Marcus announced to his fellow young scientists, "I think our bacteria are mutating in response to the quantum distortions." Aisha didn't even look up from her spectral analyzer. "Fascinating. Document everything." Rin Talarian, watching the live feed, pinched the bridge of his nose. "They're treating a potential universe-ending event like a science fair project." The first phase of the rescue attempt involved quantum entanglement synchronization, which, in practical terms, meant trying to align a ship's systems across multiple potential realities simultaneously. "We have a 0.037% chance of success," the Zahn representative calculated. Grok looked amused. "So, you're saying there's a chance?" The quantum rift was expanding. Reality itself seemed to be stretching, compressing, and doing gymnastics that would make theoretical physicists weep. Probability became less a law and more a polite suggestion. "Initiating quantum bridge," Zelnick announced. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. The rescue ship didn't so much enter the quantum rift as it was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Grok felt his molecular structure become simultaneously solid, liquid, and conceptual. Zelnick's crystalline form fractured and reformed in patterns that defied Euclidean geometry. Rin just closed his eyes and hoped he'd survive to file the paperwork. Inside the Horizon Explorer, Marcus looked up from his bacteria experiment. Interesting. The quantum fluctuations are causing interesting genetic recombination patterns. Interesting is not the word I'd use, Aisha muttered, recalibrating her spectral analyzer for the 5th time. The rescue team discovered something unexpected. The children weren't just passive victims. They were active participants in their own potential rescue. Marcus had already developed a preliminary algorithm to track quantum probability waves. Aisha's spectral analyzer was providing real-time data that made the alien computational systems look like abacuses. "They're helping us rescue them," Zelnok observed, his crystalline form spinning in what could only be described as pure scientific amazement. Grok's multiple eyes narrowed. Humans, always complicating everything. The quantum bridge began to destabilize. Probability waves crashed against each other like drunk mathematical boxers. The rescue ship started to fragment, not physically, but across potential realities. "We're losing cohesion," Zelnok shouted, though who he was shouting at was unclear given that sound itself was becoming a negotiable concept. Rin watched the probability matrices, hold, everything, together. And then, impossibly, the children did something extraordinary. Marcus's bacteria experiment, the one he'd been meticulously tracking, suddenly began emitting a quantum-stabilizing frequency. Aisha's spectral analyzer started broadcasting a signal that seemed to push back against the quantum distortions. They weren't just surviving, they were fighting back. "Is this normal?" Grok asked, watching as reality itself seemed to bend around the children's scientific curiosity. Rin's response was simple. "With human children? Absolutely." The rescue mission teetered on the edge of complete failure. The quantum rift expanded, probability became a suggestion, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. And 12 human children armed with scientific curiosity and a complete lack of understanding about the word impossible prepared to save themselves. Just another Tuesday in the Galactic Confederation. The moment reality decided to play nice was less of a dramatic revelation and more of a cosmic shrug. 1 second the quantum rift was threatening to tear apart the fundamental fabric of space-time. The next, everything snapped back into place with the precision of a bureaucratic timestamp. "Did we just win?" Grok asked, his forearms simultaneously checking multiple diagnostic systems. Zelnik's crystalline form flickered between bewildered gold and skeptical green. "I'm not entirely certain win is the correct terminology." Rin Talarian knew exactly what had happened. The children had essentially treated a potentially universe-ending event like an elaborate science experiment. Marcus, the 12-year-old who had been studying mutating bioluminescent bacteria, looked up with the most infuriatingly casual expression. "So? That was interesting." Aisha, adjusting her spectral analyzer, nodded. "Statistically improbable, but scientifically fascinating." The rescue team stared. These children had just survived and potentially solved a quantum event that should have, by all known laws of physics, completely obliterated them. Commander Krell, reviewing the mission logs back at Confederation headquarters, muttered something that sounded suspiciously like a prayer and a curse simultaneously. The quantum bridge that had been their rescue mechanism now looked like something assembled by a toddler using interdimensional Lego blocks. Alien technologies from 17 different species were tangled together in a configuration that made zero scientific sense. "Explain," demanded the Zahn Collective representative, whose mathematical brain was likely experiencing what could only be described as an existential meltdown. Marcus helpfully pulled up a holographic presentation. "So, when the quantum fluctuations interacted with the bacterial RNA sequences, we discovered a harmonic resonance that could theoretically stabilize interdimensional probability waves." Silence. Grok translated for the bewildered. The kid used mutant space bacteria to save everyone. Zelnak's crystalline form now pulsed with a color that suggested a mixture of scientific excitement and complete existential terror. Rin just wanted a very strong drink, preferably from a planet far, far away from wherever these children originated. The initial post-rescue medical examination revealed something even more startling. Not only were all 12 children completely unharmed, but they seemed enhanced. Marcus's bacteria experiment had produced organisms that could potentially revolutionize multiple scientific fields. Aisha's spectral analyzer readings suggested she had inadvertently developed a new method of quantum communication. They didn't just survive, Zelnok observed, his translucent form spinning with computational excitement. They evolved. The Galactic Confederation's emergency committee would spend the next several decades trying to understand exactly what had happened during those few critical moments. Doctoral theses would be written, entire research institutions would be founded, and the children? They would go back to their regular scientific pursuits, completely unaware that they had just rewritten several fundamental laws of physics. "So," Marcus asked as the rescue team completed their final checks, "can we continue our research expedition?" The collective groan from every alien species was simultaneously heard and felt across multiple star systems. Just another day with human children. The official Galactic Confederation report would later describe the incident as a quantum interaction event of unprecedented complexity. What it really meant was 12 human children had just scared the living daylights out of every advanced civilization in known space. 3 standard cycles after the rescue, diplomatic meetings were still being held to determine exactly what had happened. The Zahn Collective had submitted no less than 427 mathematical models attempting to explain the children's quantum intervention. Each model was more incomprehensible than the last. Rin Talarian found himself becoming something of a celebrity, or perhaps a cautionary tale, in diplomatic circles. Every time he entered a room, alien representatives would give him a look that was equal parts respect and pure, unadulterated terror. "They're just children," he would say, knowing full well that just children was the most dangerous qualifier in the universe when it came to humans. Marcus's mutant bacteria had already been adopted by 12 different research institutions. The organisms could apparently survive in conditions that would obliterate most known life forms. One strain had been observed photosynthesizing in the vacuum of space. Another had demonstrated the ability to communicate through complex chemical signals that looked suspiciously like a primitive neural network. Aisha's spectral analyzer modifications had sparked an entire new field of quantum communication theory. Physicists were still arguing about whether she had discovered something revolutionary, or if she had just broken several fundamental laws of science. The Prismatic Confederacy wanted to recruit her. The Krillian engineering collectives were offering full scholarships. The Zahn Collective was attempting to develop a mathematical model of her cognitive processes. Grok, who had been part of the rescue mission, became something of an unexpected advocate for human potential. "They're not a species," he would tell anyone who would listen. "They're a force of nature with opposable thumbs." Commander Krell's initial briefing about humans had been updated. The new version was significantly longer and included several disclaimer sections. The most telling moment came during a high-level diplomatic summit. The Galactic Confederation's eldest and most respected leaders were discussing the human situation when Marcus, now 15, casually walked in to present some research. The room went silent. He was carrying a containment unit with what appeared to be a new bacterial strain. His presentation was going to discuss potential applications for interstellar terraforming. No one breathed. "So," Marcus said, completely oblivious to the fact that he was causing 17 different alien species to have simultaneous existential crises, "I've discovered something interesting." Zelnak's crystalline form began to spin in what could only be described as scientific excitement. Grok's 4 arms crossed in a gesture of pure, unbridled anticipation. Rin Talarian just closed his eyes and wondered if it was too late to request a transfer to a nice, quiet diplomatic post, somewhere far, far away from human children. The universe, it seemed, was about to get another, unexpected lesson. Humans weren't just a species, they were a comprehensive reminder that the cosmos had a sense of humor, and it was decidedly unpredictable. And somewhere, in a research laboratory, 12 incredibly ordinary and extraordinarily extraordinary children continued to explore, experiment, and utterly terrify the entire known universe. Just another day in human history. 5 years after the quantum incident, the Galactic Confederation had developed an unofficial but absolutely critical protocol for handling human children. Rule number 1, do not underestimate them. Rule number 2, always have a mathematically improbable escape route. Rule number 3, expect the unexpected. The scientific community was still reeling from the cascading discoveries triggered by that single rescue mission. Marcus's mutant bacteria had revolutionized xenobiology. Aisha's quantum communication theories were being taught in advanced research institutions across multiple star systems. But the real impact was cultural. Every alien species now approached humans with a mixture of scientific curiosity and pure, unadulterated terror. Diplomatic meetings that once took months now happened in hours. Trade negotiations were streamlined. Technological exchanges became instantaneous, all because 12 children had essentially treated a potential universe-ending event like an afternoon science project. Rin Talarian, now the senior human diplomatic liaison, found himself in the increasingly bizarre position of being both a celebrated hero and a living cautionary tale. Alien diplomats would look at him with a mixture of respect and barely contained panic. How? The Zan Collective's lead representative would ask during every interstellar conference, do you manage these children? Rin's response was always the same, a slight smile, a shrug. We don't manage them, we just try to keep up. Grok, who had become an unexpected advocate for human potential, had written several groundbreaking papers about human adaptability. His primary thesis was simple. Humans weren't just a species, they were a comprehensive system of organized chaos. The quantum event had become something of a legendary moment in galactic history. Academic papers, doctoral dissertations, entire research institutions were founded to study that single moment of impossible intervention. Marcus and Aisha, now 17, continued their scientific work, but they were no longer just promising young researchers, they were living symbols of human potential. The Prismatic Confederacy had developed an entire diplomatic training module based on their quantum rescue. The Krillian engineering collectives used their intervention as a primary case study in adaptive problem-solving. But the true impact was more subtle. Alien species began to approach challenges differently. They started thinking beyond rigid mathematical models. They began to embrace uncertainty, to see potential where once they saw only probability. Belknap, whose crystalline form had become a renowned symbol of scientific exploration, would often lecture about the rescue mission. Humans, he would say, his translucent body spinning with excitement, do not see limitations. They see opportunities. The universe had received a comprehensive lesson in human potential. And the lesson was still ongoing. Commander Krell, who had written the original human briefing, now headed the Confederation's most advanced research initiative. His mandate was simple: understand humans, prepare for their next move. But preparation, they were learning, was a concept humans found hilarious. During one particularly tense diplomatic summit, a young human researcher casually mentioned a side project involving quantum entanglement and interdimensional communication. The entire room went silent. Marcus, now working on advanced xenobiological research, simply raised an eyebrow. What? He asked, genuinely confused by the stunned expressions. Rin Talarian just smiled. Another day, another impossible breakthrough. The universe continued to spin, humans continued to surprise, and somewhere, 12 children who had once saved reality itself were probably working on their next impossible project. Just another Tuesday in the Galactic Confederation.